You are listening to Verba Managed, where words do remain.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dearest peas. We are the cultured carrots serving up diversity on a plate. Welcome to the 5th episode of a new series that will accompany you all along the Mondays of March and even longer since we've decided to record a few more. A series that embraces the concept of multiculturalism in itself. Focusing on broad topics such as success, work, love relationships, family, or even death, we bring together people from all over the world, from cultures that seemingly have nothing in common, yet united by common desires. Come join us for this journey to the melting pot of hearts. For this 5th episode, we'll focus on the very interesting notion of sexuality, sexual relations, and sexual orientation. A notion subject to questions in everyone's lives, especially in teenage and young adult life. One that also creates a lot of debates and discussion in our societies, subject to huge cultural differences. To discuss all these questions, we are delighted to welcome with us today Elise, Srijan, and Hugo. So first of all, could you all start by telling us a bit more about yourself? Where do you come from? What is your background? And also perhaps how do you identify yourself in terms of sexual orientation? Srijan, would you like to start?
Thank you, Cam. So my name is Srijan and I'm from Delhi, which is the capital of India. I've lived there nearly all my life, so this is my first time living anywhere else. I identify as bisexual and that's about it for me.
Elise?
Well, I'm Elise, I'm French. I've lived basically half of my life in Paris and half in the West, so I'm kind of in between. In terms of sexuality, I don't usually put a label on my sexuality because I feel like I don't have enough experience to express myself really, so I just take things as they come. But maybe I might consider myself closer to bisexual than straight, so yeah, that's about it for me.
And Hugo?
So I'm Hugo, I'm French and I've basically lived my whole life in Paris before coming to Le Havre. And I'm French and Portuguese, but I've never really experienced that part of my culture. And I would identify personally as just queer because I don't really like the word gay, but I think most conventionally most people would define me as gay, and so I think I've more and more started to use that word.
Okay, thank you so much. So it's very interesting because both of you, Elise and Hugo, mentioned somehow the question of labels, how everyone feels, or even the society make us feel the necessity to put us in categories. So you were saying, for instance, Elise, that you don't like the fact of putting yourself in a category. Was it something that evolved through time? I mean, was it something that you always felt, or is it something that came through time and with your research or discoveries?
Well, it's obviously something that evolved because it went from something that I would not even question or think about. When you evolve in our society that's very heteronormative, you don't really, you evolve and you just don't question your sexuality. And then, well, as I started to grow up, especially around the end of middle school and high school, you start meeting new people and discovering new things. And obviously, you go through puberty, so hormones and stuff, you start experiencing a few stuff. So I would say that it definitely evolved, especially since, definitely since high school. So yeah, I would say that it was more of I went from not questioning myself to meeting a lot of new people, hearing a lot of new stories, and thinking oh wait, I might not be completely straight, but I don't really feel putting a label or thinking into it too much, so I'll just take things as they come. And well, I don't feel the need. I feel labels are not something that are, except if it's gonna become an obstacle in a relationship with people. As long as it doesn't become a problem, I don't feel labels are that necessary. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. No, it's very understandable because I feel also in the question of labels there is some kind of pressure. Whenever you're growing up and even coming in general to new circle of people and all, the question of like what is your orientation sometimes come like without any context, and people are just asking out of nowhere. And I feel like there's in high school and even like all the teenagehood, there's this pressure about you have to kind of find yourself, and also because of the fact that some sexuality are more difficult to affirm than other. I mean, I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but any rejection from your peers, or like sometimes it's very difficult to just pop up in a conversation and just say, okay, my sexual orientation is that. I don't know if you've ever kind of felt this pressure of others, or like the necessity to affirm yourself as something, and like a sexual orientation or whatever.
So that's an interesting question actually. For me personally, I completely understand why people might not like labels. For me, I find a weird amount of comfort in labels. There's something that's so unique and special about the bisexual experience that may not necessarily be the case for other people on the spectrum, right? And this label allows me to explore that aspect of my personality a little more. And it's a big cultural thing as well. There's bisexual songs, there's bisexual movies, there's bisexual, aesthetics and everything. And I feel like I connect with the word quite a bit. And honestly, as Ali said, when you live in such a heteronormative society, there is a weird amount of pride that you feel in taking a stance and saying that, okay, I don't follow this binary, I don't follow what everyone else does, and I'm here in not necessarily in opposition, but providing an alternative to what is the status quo right now. So in that sense, I take a lot of comfort in labeling myself as bisexual.
It's like safety in the community, and the fact that you can identify yourself as a special community.
I think that's really relevant, but I think it's also very different depending on how really you identify, because I think the biggest challenge to me deciding really to identify with being gay or being anything else for that matter is the kind of stereotypes that are associated with this kind of label, especially, well, gay being like the most well-known, and it's also the kind that's most derived like in popular culture. The way that people perceive you when you come up to them and you tell them that you're gay or that's how you identify, it comes with a very heavy history, and also a lot of stereotypes that are really hard to like get rid of. And it doesn't mean that I don't like enjoy a big part of gay culture. I mean, I love going to gay pride. It's like really, I do a lot of things that are very stereotypical, and I'm not ashamed of it, but I also view my sexuality more as something that's individualized, and I don't want to be put into that big basket of being gay, especially because it has some very bad connotations in certain societies, parts of societies as well. And I mean, a lot of people, if I come up to them and I tell them that I'm gay, they're gonna like not necessarily be scared, but they'll think, oh well, he's probably gonna have AIDS and he's gonna die young. And to be honest, like, it's people that are not well informed, but sometimes I do think about it and it makes me not comfortable.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean, because I had like a friend who was bi, and another friend once told him that basically in a party that he could just like kiss, make out, or like fuck with everyone because he was bi, and so he was like open to everyone. And it was very hard for that person to understand that like being bi does not mean you're attracted to everyone. It's just that you can be attracted to both gender.
But I feel like that works with like gay people as well, because like I feel like it happens often. Like, I don't know, especially like when a guy comes out as gay, other guys tend to like feel threatened, like because they feel like they're necessarily like, I mean, being gay doesn't mean that you're attracted to every single man on the planet, and I feel like some people have trouble understanding that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it also comes with people thinking that you're not serious in relationships just because of the way that like gay people are like represented. Or like, oh, you're gonna jump from person to another person not being able to have like a stable relationship, or that's like you're more likely to like get sexually transmitted diseases and stuff like that. And it's simply not true. Like there's as many different ways to like envision your own sexuality if you're gay than if you're like anything different, you know?
You know, the fact that these stereotypes and preconceived notions exist, it for me it feels very empowering to identify with as bisexual, because it feels like I'm taking control back into my own hands of how other people perceive me. I'm defining my own bisexual identity. I'm not going to have it defined by what anyone else says or thinks. And for me, that's why there is this, you know, there's a struggle that a lot of queer people might go through to reclaim their identities and not have it defined by the worst aspects of stereotypes or anything else. And I think that's a very important, aspect of the queer experience that all of us do experience at some level.
It's what you say is kind of not funny, but it's because like in the past few years I've done a lot of research in general, like, but it was not that much to empower myself. It was just like because I felt that it was necessary for me to know better myself and to like it's not a comfort in the label in the sense that I have people around me. It's more a comfort in the label in the sense of I'm fitting in society. So it's kind of the same argument but opposite explanation to it. And like I know that doing a lot of research and even meeting people here, I just like discovered so many things about sexuality in general. And I also realized that we're calling it sexuality and like sexual orientation, which means that we put a very importance on like sex in general in it. And so like that was the next thing I wanted to like ask you a bit about. It was like, how do you feel about the pressure and the importance we put on like sexual relation in themselves nowadays? Like, because even in the terms itself, we mentioned the notion of sex and not. I'm telling that because I know that like I've done a lot of research and I've kind of discovered the difference between romanticism and like sexuality, and it was kind of a big discovery for me because like I'm not able to put myself in a label, but I know I'm like somewhere between like demisexual and gray sexual, which means that I don't experience sexual attraction all the time. So like if people don't know, gray sexuality is like you don't experience sexuality as much, like attraction for sex as much as other people around, like the normality we could say. And demisexuality is you only experience sexual attraction for the people that you already have an emotional bond with. But it's the moment where I really discovered the difference between like romanticism and like sexuality, and that we like this distinction existed, why we don't really emphasize on it in our society. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think you can identify wherever you feel like on the spectrum and not necessarily be like necessarily like part of this idea that sexuality is like your relation to sex is what defines you, and I think that's even less like common way to see things in society, because it's really like the basis of how people like view their own life. I mean it's, for example, like there's a huge focus that's put onto virginity, the loss of virginity. Like it is supposed to be a right to you becoming an adult, you know? And that does not necessarily, like, that puts a lot of pressure on everyone, because everyone is expected to have a fulfilling sex life and to lose your virginity fast, so that you can become an adult officially. And I think that really shows how society puts pressure on people to like identify as something based on your own sex life.
I mean, I kind of agree, and I think it also works like a lot for college, you know, because you go in college and people kind of expect you to know to start experiencing, and by experiencing they mean basically like fuck around and have fun. And if you do, I mean, good for you, that's amazing. But like I feel like that's like a pressure that people tend to put on like you're going to college, so you have to do that, you know, like you have to lose your virginity if you're a virgin, you have to experience with many people if you haven't done that before. And I feel like that's kind of like it's just a stupid pressure, because I mean everyone has a different relationship with their sexuality, everyone has different needs and desires. So I think it's just, yeah, it's something that is very, very sad in the different, you know, step of your life. Like different things are expected from your sexuality in different steps of your life. Whereas everyone should be able, you know, to like go to like to take their time to to go at their own pace and to have like experiences at any steps in their lives as they feel like it.
Yeah, and personally, all my relationships in the past have been a lot more rooted in like romantic affection feelings rather than like exploring, the more sexual aspects of those relationships. Also because there isn't much of a culture around that in India. So a lot of my bisexuality, a lot of my attraction towards the people that I am attracted to, is based on like romantic feelings rather than purely physical attraction or anything like that. And in that sense, it does kind of annoy me that there's such a big focus around losing your virginity and how that ties into how you explore your sexuality and all that. Also because I personally think virginity is a social construct at some level. So a big part of me being able to reclaim my own sexual identity was me being okay with the fact that I can explore it and go about it on my own terms and not have to fit into anyone else's framework. And that I think is a big part of my own personal sexual identity. And I know it's kind of ironic to use the word sexual identity in this case, considering that I'm trying to emphasize on romantic feelings here. But yeah, I think that's a very important part of how I'm exploring my identity.
I mean, that's really nice because I remember in like middle school and all, everyone like it was like kind of a competition of who would like lose their virginity first, and it was like everyone was just lying to everyone, and like it was just at some point, and then people were asking questions and people were just like inventing entire stories about it, and just like it was just a huge. It did not make any sense because it was just like who would be able to lie the best or whatever. And so I felt like it's really at this moment that I realized, and like even thinking about it now, I just realized that there was so much pressure on it that everyone felt like lying because of the vision that peace could have on them. So, yeah. Do you have any last word you would like to say about the subject?
Well, have fun, experience, go at your pace, and don't let anyone tell you what to do with your sexuality.
That's a nice one.
Is that a good lesson?
It's a nice one. So thank you Srijan, Elise and Hugo for this fascinating discussion around sexuality, sexual relations and sexual orientations, and how like diverse perspective on it can it be an even way of identify yourself. And thank you listeners for tuning in. This was brought to you by Cultured Carrots of the Verb Eminent podcast. Thank you to the writer Miranda and Cam and the producer Isabella. Remember to tune in next Monday for most episodes of the Cultured Carrots on multiculturalism, and take care.